Alright, welcome. This is a video I'm going to make explaining how to use Cheat Engine to watch a couple of RAM addresses in Final Fantasy VII with the intent of using it to improve your movement in a speedrun. When you're doing a step route in FF7, like, movement is everything, and for newer runners of the game it can be kind of hard to see where you're suboptimal in your movement or always being behind when you're practicing, and this should help alleviate some of those issues. So to showcase this, I'm going to be using two tools here. One is FF7. It's a PlayStation emulator. It's my recommended one for learning PlayStation speedruns, version 1.13 for reference, and to the right you'll see a memory scanning program called Cheat Engine. I have version 7.0. So on the left here you'll see I'm in Final Fantasy VII at the very beginning of the game, which is important, and we'll just come in here into Cheat Engine, and we want to view the memory of PlayStation Fin. So open it, and we're in. So the two memory addresses we're interested in, one is called Step ID, and the other one is called Fraction, and they're both correlated to doing a step route. Step ID kind of shows you where you are in the step route, and fractions show you like your frames of movement in between step IDs. Oh, sorry. So the first address we will look for is fraction. Fraction increments by 32 every frame of movement, more or less. And since we know we start at 0, 0, we can go ahead and just do our first scan here of 0. And you'll see here we get 6.2 million memory addresses. I'm not going through 6.2 million memory addresses. So instead what I'm going to do is move one frame, and that should increment fractions to 32. And you can move one frame by just moving and immediately opening the menu. So we can do that by doing that. And then our fraction address should now be 32, so we can do another scan. And now you can see we went from 6.2 million addresses to 8. Much easier to deal with. And from here we should just be able to look at a memory address that increments by 32. And it kind of looks like it's that second to last one. So I believe that is our fraction memory address. So we can just come here, double click it, and name it fraction. Great. So now we could normally find step ID, except the thing about step ID is that it does not increment on non-hostile fields. And a non-hostile field is a screen where you can't get encounters. So I could run around on this screen all day long, and I'll never get an encounter. So we're just going to have to move on to the next screen. So we'll just go and do this fight real quickly. And before we go, you should probably make a save state here, and I'll show you why in a little bit, but we'll just come here, say save state, and then we just want to name the save state whatever our information is at this time. So we know that the step ID isn't incrementing at all, so step ID would be 0. And then obviously Cheat Engine shows our fraction value, so we can set our fraction value to 96 and save it. Alright, so let's move on. So we haven't moved on this screen at all, so we know our step ID is still 0, so let's start a new scan of 0, 6.6 million, again, no good. But now we're looking for step ID, and step ID increments by steps of 2 every time fractions overflow from 256. So we can just do a little bit of movement here on the screen, 160, 192, 224, and then now when we move here, fractions will go back to 0 and our step ID will increment to 2, like that. So now we can do a next scan of 2, and narrows it down to 14. So now just from these memory addresses, just like fractions, we can kind of just see which one's incrementing by 2. And it kind of looks like that one there on the bottom. So that would be our step ID address. Alright, so those are our two memory addresses. But now the question would be, well, what do you do with this information? Well, I will show you some stuff you can do with this information. So, the first one that is probably overlooked a lot is you can start figuring out which screens are hostile and which ones aren't, because there are some screens that you would think you can get encounters on but you can't, and vice versa. So just like that previous screen I just showed you, the very first screen of the game, I told you that it's non-hostile and you can't get any encounters. Well, that's only half true. It's non-hostile until you leave it for the first time. So now, if you notice I come back on the screen, the step ID increments when it didn't before. So unlike before, if you did move on this screen for a while, you will get an encounter like that. So there's that. Now, let's get to the more practical uses. So we'll just blaze through this real quick. Okay, so I'll make a little save state here. So, this is your first, real screen of the run, I would say, that you're trying to, get good at. So, I'm gonna do this screen as optimally as I remember how to here. Alright, and you'll see our step ID and fraction is at 58 and 160. So now, let's say I'm more of a newer runner, and I'm not doing this so optimally. You'll notice that I overflowed, or I incremented the step ID to 60, and now I'm at 96 fractions. So there's quite a bit of frames of unoptimized movement there. So that's kind of what you're looking at. You want to be able to reference where you are on your step ID and fraction, so that you can see the actual improvements going from screen to screen. So you can see I got 58.32. That's better than I had done at all. So that's another thing you can do, and then I guess the final bit of useful information here is, like this first encounter we're about to get here, I happen to know that the step ID that I get that on is like, it's 76 or something like that. So let's go here. I guess I'll make another save state. Alright, yep, 76. Okay, so this encounter is a little bit early, a lot early actually. And this happens a lot. You'll just be so far behind that you can't make up the steps. The only way you can make up steps is just by having more perfect movement. So I'm never going to get this encounter where it's supposed to be. So what can we do about that? Well, we know we get it on step ID 76, right? Like that. So we can just catch the encounter right before we get to it. So you can see I'm on step ID 74, fraction 224. Therefore, the next frame of movement I make, I would normally get the encounter. And I guess I can just prove that for sure, like that. So what can we do? Well, let's just tell the game that we're a little bit ahead, right? So not only can Cheat Engine view memory, but it can also edit memory as well. So I could just say, I don't know, switch this step ID to 70 and my fraction to 0. And now you'll see I get the encounter in the right spot. So this can also really help you when you're practicing, to at least continue your practice on the right step route. And really that's about it. Oh, I guess there is one more thing. So let's run away from this encounter. Actually, we already made our save states, right? No, we didn't. Okay. So run away from this encounter. Great. Okay. So now we just want to make a second save state, and we just want our step ID and fraction to be different than our previous save state, which they are. So we can just go here and name this step ID 76 and fraction 0. Okay. So the final caveat with this is that it would really be convenient if you could just save these two memory addresses, and then anytime you want to come here and practice, you would just load this up and your addresses would be there. But I guess it doesn't really work like that. So if I close and open PSX-Fin, you can see all these values go, whatever. We can make sure we're viewing, and we'll keep the address list to showcase this. Alright. It's the beginning of the game. So you can already see here one of these addresses we were looking at earlier just has no data anymore. And if you notice, when we're moving around here, our fraction memory address isn't moving anymore. What happened? Well, whenever you boot the game, memory addresses get allocated dynamically, so when you play through a game once, the memory address won't be the same the next time you come here and play it. So, instead of having to do all of those steps we just did, we can use our save states. So, let's delete these because they're no good anymore. So we know with this save state, our fraction is 96, so we can just search 96, and then we could say load our other save state with the fraction 0, do a next scan, and then you can just do it this way. So now I'll go back to this save state, 96, and there you go. You can probably get it from there, which is that one. So you can use these save states so that you don't have to keep doing this manually like we did before. Unfortunately, they don't stay the same between different play sessions. But otherwise, that should about cover it. Hope this helps somebody, and thank you for watching this if you are.